What if I told you there's an underground network larger than some countries' subway systems, and it was carved with hand tools over 2,000 years ago? Or there is a tunnel sealed so completely that when it was opened, the air inside hadn't been breathed for 18 centuries. These places exist. They're documented. They're measurable. And they're forcing archaeologists to ask questions they don't have clean answers to. Today we're looking at 3 of the most extraordinary ancient underground sites ever discovered. Not theories, not legends, actual places you can visit that researchers have studied for decades, and that still don't fully make sense. We're starting in Turkey, then moving to Mexico, and ending in Peru. 3 completely different cultures, and one pattern that keeps showing up. Humanity has always built secrets into the earth. While there are more sites we could cover, these are arguably the craziest. So let's get into it. In 1963, a man in central Turkey was renovating his basement. Pretty routine stuff. He knocked down a wall, expecting to find bedrock or maybe some old storage space. Instead, he found a tunnel. And that tunnel led to another tunnel, and another. What he'd accidentally broken into was the entrance to an entire underground city that had been sealed for centuries. That city is called Derinkuyu, and I want you to really picture what we're talking about here. It goes down 18 levels, 280 feet beneath the surface. At its peak, archaeologists estimate it could have housed 20,000 people. Not for a few days, but for months at a time. There were living quarters, kitchens, wine presses, oil presses, stables for livestock, storage rooms for food, and even churches carved directly into the volcanic rock. On the second floor, there's a large barrel-vaulted chamber that researchers believe may have served as a classroom. This wasn't a bunker. It was a functioning city, just underground. And here's where it starts getting strange. Derinkuyu isn't alone. There are over 40 known underground cities in the Cappadocia region. 40. Many of them are connected by tunnels stretching for miles. One confirmed tunnel runs between Derinkuyu and another underground city called Kaymakli. That's roughly 5 miles of passage carved through solid rock. We're not talking about rough-hewn escape routes here. These are engineered corridors, wide enough for people and supplies to move through. The engineering is genuinely impressive by any standard. Ventilation shafts, some dropping over 200 feet, still circulate air today. The temperature underground stays constant year-round, hovering between 55 and 59 degrees Fahrenheit, which actually made it more comfortable than the surface during both the scorching summers and freezing winters of central Anatolia. Then there are the doors. Massive circular stone doors, some weighing close to 1,000 pounds, were designed to be rolled into place from the inside only. A single person could seal off a section using these stones. But from the outside, they were nearly impossible to move. Each floor could be isolated independently. If invaders breached one level, the residents could retreat deeper and seal the passage behind them. Now, mainstream archaeology has reasonable explanations for why these cities were built. The Cappadocia region has been invaded a lot throughout history, by Persians, Arabs, Mongols, and others. The ability to disappear underground with your entire community, seal the entrances, and wait out an army? That's a pretty powerful defensive advantage. The local Greek population actually have a name for these cities, the refuge. And that explanation makes sense. It does. But here's what doesn't get explained as easily: the scale. If you just needed to hide from raiders for a few days, you don't carve 18 levels into the earth. You don't build wine presses and schools. You don't connect your hiding spot to other cities 5 miles away through underground highways. The sheer volume of rock removed from Derinkuyu alone, we're talking millions of cubic feet, would have required an enormous, organized labor force working for years, maybe generations. And all of it was done with hand tools. The other thing that nags at researchers is the timeline. The oldest parts of these cities may date back to the Hittites, around 1600 BCE. Some archaeologists think even earlier. But there's no definitive record of when construction started or who actually began the excavation. What we do know is that different cultures kept adding to them over millennia. Christians expanded them 1800 years ago. Greek communities used them as late as 1923. There's actually a documented account from a Cambridge linguist named Richard McGillivray Dawkins, who was researching in the region between 1909 and 1911. He recorded that when news of massacres in Adana reached the area, a large portion of the local population immediately retreated into these underground chambers. They didn't sleep above ground for several nights. This happened in 1909. These aren't ancient relics. They were still functioning refuges within living memory. So these cities were in continuous use for potentially 3,000 years. And then they were just forgotten, sealed up, lost until a guy knocked down the wrong wall. Here's the kicker. We still haven't found all of them. In 2022, archaeologists announced a newly discovered underground city in Midyat, possibly larger than Derinkuyu. Another site in Nevşehir has been described as potentially the biggest yet, though excavations are ongoing. Less than half of Derinkuyu itself has been fully explored. There are sealed passages, flooded sections, and levels that have never been mapped. 600 known entrances have been found, scattered throughout the modern town, under houses, in courtyards, beneath streets. For centuries, locals drew water from deep wells, not realizing their buckets were passing through the upper levels of an entire hidden city. The name Derinkuyu literally means deep well in Turkish. They were standing on top of it the whole time and had no idea. Let's move across the Atlantic to Mexico. Teotihuacan was one of the largest cities in the ancient world. At its peak, around 450 CE, somewhere between 100 and 200,000 people lived there. The Pyramid of the Sun is one of the biggest structures ever built in the pre-Columbian Americas. You've probably seen pictures. It's massive. But we don't know who built it. I mean, we know someone did. The city's right there. But unlike the Maya, who left detailed inscriptions naming their rulers and recording their histories, the people of Teotihuacan left almost nothing. No royal tombs have ever been found. No clear records of kings or dynasties. The name Teotihuacan isn't even what the original inhabitants called it. That's what the Aztecs named it centuries later when they found the abandoned ruins. It means the place where gods were born. The Aztecs assumed only gods could have built something so enormous. Which brings us to what's underneath. In the fall of 2003, heavy rains hit the site. A few days later, archaeologist Sergio Gómez noticed that a sinkhole had opened near the base of a structure called the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. He grabbed a flashlight, looked in, and couldn't see the bottom. So his team rigged up a rope, lowered him down, and what he found changed our understanding of the entire site. It was a tunnel. Not a natural cave, a deliberately carved passage running directly beneath the pyramid. And it had been sealed, intentionally blocked with massive boulders roughly 1,800 years ago. That's not a typo. Whatever was in that tunnel, someone wanted it to stay hidden, and it did hide for nearly 2 millennia. The air Gómez breathed when they finally broke through. It hadn't been breathed since the Roman Empire was still around. The excavation took over a decade. Gómez and his team used ground-penetrating radar to map the passage, then sent in a remote-controlled robot called Tlaloc 2TC, equipped with an infrared camera and laser scanner to generate 3D visualizations of what lay ahead. What they eventually found inside is genuinely bizarre. The tunnel stretches about 330 feet, ending in a cross-shaped set of chambers positioned directly beneath the pyramid's center. The walls weren't just carved. They were covered in pyrite and hematite. Fool's gold. Under torchlight, the entire passage would have glittered like a sky full of stars. Researchers also found metallic spheres coated in reflective minerals, possibly representing planets or celestial bodies. And they found pyrite mirrors, objects that, in Mesoamerican belief, were considered portals to other realms. And then there was the mercury. In 2015, the team discovered pools of liquid mercury inside the chambers. This was a big deal. For years, scholars assumed mercury wasn't used in Mesoamerica, or at least not in significant quantities. Mercury is rare, difficult to extract, and extremely toxic. Mining it would have been dangerous, transporting it even more so. And yet there it was, pooled in the darkness beneath the pyramid like silvery rivers. Why? The leading theory is symbolic. In Mesoamerican cosmology, the underworld was often imagined as a watery realm, a place of darkness and reflection. Mercury, with its liquid shimmer, may have been used to represent underworld lakes or rivers. The builders were essentially recreating a cosmic geography beneath the pyramid, a miniature underworld, complete with glittering walls meant to look like the night sky and reflective pools standing in for sacred waters. Over 75,000 artifacts have been recovered from the tunnel so far. Jade statues with inlaid eyes that would have shone with precious minerals, the remains of jaguars and wolves, carved shells, rubber balls used in the Mesoamerican ball game, and elaborate offerings that suggest this place was meant for rituals of immense importance. At the far end of the tunnel, researchers found figurines positioned as if leaning back, gazing upward, toward what would have been the exact center of the pyramid above. Some researchers interpret this as the figures contemplating the axis where the three planes of the universe meet. But interestingly, there are no bodies. Despite 20 years of excavation, despite the obvious ritual significance, no royal tomb has been found. Some researchers think it's still there, deeper maybe, or in a section that hasn't been accessed. Others wonder if the tunnel was never meant to hold physical remains at all. Maybe it was purely symbolic, a place built for rituals that, once complete, was sealed forever. What's obvious is this wasn't thrown together. The precision, the materials, and the effort was clearly planned. And then it was deliberately hidden from history. The tunnel wasn't just closed. It was filled with mud, rocks, and debris, packed tight, as if to ensure no one could ever enter again. There are similar tunnels detected under the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, by the way. They haven't been fully excavated, and we can only guess at what is down there. Now we head to Peru, and this one's different from the others. Cappadocia was about survival. Teotihuacan was about secrecy and symbolism. Chavín de Huantar was about something weirder. It was built to change how people experience reality. Let me explain. Chavín de Huantar is a ceremonial complex high in the Peruvian Andes, about 10,000 feet above sea level. It dates back to somewhere between 1200 and 500 BCE, well over 1,000 years before the Inca. For roughly 700 years, it was a major pilgrimage destination, drawing people from across the region. And beneath the temples and plazas lies a network of underground galleries, unlike anything else in the ancient world. These aren't just tunnels. They're designed to mess with your senses. Starting in 2008, researchers from Stanford's Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics, yeah, that's a real program, began studying the galleries. What they found was remarkable. The passageways were engineered to manipulate sound in very specific ways. Echoes build rapidly from multiple directions simultaneously, making them what researchers call diffuse and hard to locate. You hear something, but your brain can't figure out where it's coming from. Certain frequencies, particularly those produced by human voices and by conch shell trumpets found at the site, resonate intensely, amplifying into sounds described as bone rattling. The conch trumpets, called Pututus, are key here. Archaeologists recovered 20 of them from the site, and when played in the galleries, they don't just echo, they transform. The blasts come out sounding like roaring animals. Researchers who've tested this describe it as overwhelming and disorienting. Some participants in the experiments reported feeling nauseous from the low-frequency tones vibrating through their bodies. In total darkness, with that sound reverberating off stone walls from every direction, your brain loses its frame of reference. But it's not just sound. Water channels run beneath the floors, creating a constant low-frequency rumble. In the 1970s, a Peruvian archaeologist discovered a terraced canal running beneath one of the plazas that creates a tremendous sound effect when water flows through it, like thunder rolling underground. The galleries are also built so that light can be manipulated through narrow ducts, shafts that would allow priests to control exactly how much illumination reached different sections. The architecture itself funnels visitors through increasingly tight, winding passages until they reach the heart of the complex, a chamber containing the Lanzón. The Lanzón is a 15-foot granite monolith carved with the snarling face of a fanged deity. It's positioned in a cruciform gallery deep underground. And here's something interesting. There's a channel cut into the ceiling directly above the Lanzón that connects to the level above. Some researchers believe priests could have spoken through this channel, making the idol itself appear to speak. Essentially, it was an ancient oracle built into the architecture. Imagine the experience. You're a pilgrim who's traveled for days or weeks to reach this place. You're led underground, into corridors that twist and turn. It is unbelievably dark, and the air vibrates with sounds you can't locate. Roars that seem to come from the walls themselves. The floor trembles with the rush of unseen water. And then finally, you're brought before this massive stone figure with its carved fangs and glaring eyes. And it speaks to you. This wasn't accidental. The builders knew exactly what they were doing. And here's where the recent science gets really interesting. In May 2025, a peer-reviewed study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, that's one of the most respected scientific journals in the world, confirmed what researchers had long suspected. Chemical analysis of bone tubes found sealed in one of the galleries detected traces of vilca and nicotiana. Vilca is a powerful psychoactive substance derived from the seeds of the anadenanthera tree. It contains compounds that trigger intense hallucinogenic experiences. Nicotiana is tobacco. The tubes were inhaling equipment, basically ancient drug paraphernalia. And the residues showed that the substances were mixed, used together. This is the oldest direct chemical evidence of combined psychoactive inhalation anywhere in the Americas. Not speculation, not interpretation of artwork. Actual molecular traces preserved for nearly 3,000 years. So let's put this together. You have architecture specifically designed to disorient, to strip away normal sensory reference points. You have sound engineering that produces overwhelming, impossible-to-locate acoustic effects. You have controlled darkness, rumbling water, and a journey that ends before a massive stone idol that may have been designed to speak. And you have chemical evidence that the people participating in these rituals were also consuming psychoactive substances. Stanford archaeologist John Rick, who's led the research at Chavin for nearly 30 years, has a term for this: a tradition-based convincing system. The idea is that the priests or elites who controlled the site used this full sensory assault: the architecture, the sound, the drugs, all of it, to reinforce their authority. If you went into those tunnels and came out believing you'd communed with gods or spirits, you'd trust the people who controlled access to that experience. You'd go home and tell others. Then you'd return, likely bringing offerings. It's not magic. It's not supernatural. It's technology, just not the kind we usually think of. Technology of perception, technology of belief. And 3,000 years ago, someone figured out how to build it into stone. 3 sites, 3 continents: Turkey, Mexico, Peru. Cultures that never had contact with each other. And yet all of them poured enormous resources into building complex underground structures, then sealed them away. Cappadocia shows us that ancient people could engineer entire subterranean cities capable of sustaining thousands, and that number continues to grow today as we find more. Teotihuacan shows us that some cultures went to extreme lengths to hide their most sacred spaces. And Chavin shows us that underground architecture wasn't just about protection or secrecy. It could be engineered to alter human consciousness itself. None of this requires ancient aliens or lost super-civilizations to explain. But it does require us to update our assumptions. These weren't primitive people stumbling through history. They were engineers, architects, and, in the case of Chavin, something like early psychologists. This is just 3 sites. There are dozens more. We want to hear from you. Which underground mysteries should we dig into next? Drop your suggestions in the comments. Thanks for watching. Stay curious.